Namah Shri Shankarananda Gurupadam Bhujjanmane Savilas Sahamoha Savilas Mahamoha Grahe Vasaik Karmane. Just remind your mind every day, not only in the morning, but during the day also. What we are reminding, that salutation to the highest, salutation to the one pure consciousness. So how salutation works when we keep aside our ego, whether you do it with physically or not, it doesn't make any change, but mentally we have to feel like that. The great delusion with all its manifestations, we have already understood that the great delusion with all its manifestation has become a monster, and the Eastern wisdom removes, destroys that monster. How? Just to remind you, Shruti, listening and learning, Yukti, logically understanding. Logical understanding means the cause and effect. Why? Because that brings the knowledge into our intellect clearly. And then experience, direct experience. Now I see myself into the mirror. Delusion. I see the image of myself into the mirror, clarity. So, it's a logical understanding. Then third step is experience. I experience myself outside the mirror, even though the image is reflected there. Oh, that is my experience, direct experience. Just one example. We will continue our journey with that. So now just there's another way. In that state, you look at the breath, free flow of the breath, free flow of the breath. Now see that there is a free, you are aware of the flow of the breath. The mind is not carried away by any thought, feeling, and emotions. If it is carried away, that is where the impurity of the mind exists. So the two things we need to find the real self, one is the purity of the mind, and other is the power of discernment. Means discernment in the intellect, purity of the mind in the mind. So today we will go a little deeper into this purity of the mind and discernment, so that our future journey will become easy and you can open your eyes. Our master says that the physical weapon or external force cannot help me realize my real self. You have to be it does not mean the external factors give help, support, but they alone cannot help me to reach to that state. What is required? Purity of the mind and the power of discernment. Purity of the mind, anywhere, anytime. Power of discernment, anytime, anywhere. So this master explains clearly that no physical means, no physical weapons. Physical weapon, I have. What do you think? I'm doing asana, advanced asanas for the last 20 years. No use. It is external. It may help you to sit in a posture for a longer period of time, but what about the mind? You have not taken care of the mind. But it doesn't mean that we should not do the practice. You have to be, people get misled by it. Second part is the natural elements, these elements. By wind or the fire, I can reach to that self knowledge. Master clearly says not possible. Countless actions, not possible. That state of awakening and realization is not possible. It does not mean that I get all the knowledge intellectually. I don't convert that into a daily life experience, then it will help. That too is not helping us. So the first thing to understand, this bondage is non-physical. It is rooted in the impurity of the mind and non-discernment attitude of the intellect. And that is why this master says, I have written this text only for the seeker. Seeker means who has a power of discernment and whose mind is pure. You have to be very clear. All actions may purify the mind, make it capable to humility, discern, and experience dispassion. Actions can lead to the purification of the mind. The moment I said, I could see you as a manifestations of my master. So now what about my speaking to you? I'm just presenting to all the masters whether what I'm presenting is right or wrong. So there is a sense of humility comes. Can we convert all our actions to purify the mind? If that is possible, then the life becomes beautiful. Just think that a person who has forgotten his name and trying to remember by cleaning the house. Not possible. Not possible. I forget my real nature. So the master is pointing out that only getting obsessed with the asanas, breathing practices, mantras is not going to help. So then people leave all these things and they start intellectually acquiring the knowledge. That too is also not possible to help you to reach there. So the master is saying you have to walk in path. It's a razor's edge. So by actions we purify the mind. So it is not merely an intellectual knowledge. But when the discernment comes, you have a constant awareness of real and the false, changing and unchanging, self and the non-self, permanent and the temporary, consciousness and its modifications. For example, unless we maintain that awareness all the time, it is not possible to treat the path, especially on Saturday's session. Monday, Thursday is okay. So now this master, why I brought this topic, you will understand now. Why I brought this topic. So the master says that, oh, you asked me the question that what is grace and what is grace. You asked me the question that where is the grace? Grace has to be from the God. It is only for the higher seeker, not for the layman seeker, that they should get rid of it. Even at the stage we are a higher seeker, we should believe in the existence. We should keep that belief that there is a isness in our mind. But for the highest seeker, Master says, what is grace? Oh, you are talking to me of the grace. Grace is mental purity, clarity of understanding, and receptivity. He is redefining. When you have a mental purity, you will always have a gratitude, a sense of gratefulness, clarity of understanding. So when you are very much clear, clarity of understanding between the real and the false, you will not unnecessarily enter into any kind of a conflict. And then the receptivity. That is why I brought this topic, that mental purity, it means throughout my life I am performing all my actions for the sake of purity of the mind. With that, there is a clarity of understanding, and then there is a receptivity. It is like a clear, still lake that perfectly reflects the sky. A pure mind reflects the truth of our being without distortion. A turbulent, muddy lake cannot provide the clear reflection, no matter how bright the sun above it. Now understand another point clearly. Purity here is both a prerequisite for discernment and its natural result. So we pay too much attention to our discernment and we become intellectual, and we don't pay too much clear attention and focus on the purity of the mind. So the master is saying, as we discriminate or discern correctly, we become pure. If you discern, the mind becomes pure. As the mind becomes pure, our discernment becomes more refined. Both are required, both are interconnected. Purity of the mind. So some people they can argue, they can put forth intellectual argument, but it will not work. Master says it will not work. So both the power of discernment and the mental purity will work. How it will work? By Shravan, Manan and Nididhyasan, listening, learning, contemplation, reflection, and practice and experience that practice. Otherwise, it will not. Discernment and purity have a combined relationship. As one discerns correctly, the mind becomes pure. And as the mind becomes pure, discernment becomes more refined and effective. Near and dear ones, or your honey says, you know what the hell you are doing? Now, instead of getting agitated, power of discernment gives a very humble response. So you are taking the mind to the purity by answering by responding to your honey with the power of discernment. One format is that. But if my mind is constantly thinking, this is too much, enough is enough, and he does not understand, so now I'm going to leave. So now mental purity is required. So when I have a mental purity, what does it mean by leaving? There is no meaning at all. For example, practical example. We are already separate. So even the purity of the mind can bring to the power of discernment, and the power of discernment can also help you to purify the mind. This level of awareness we should have all the time. All the time. How it is possible, I already told you, we have to practice Mangalacharan, and then we have to remember that what this master is saying, Sat Chetanand, I am the Sat Chetanand. With reference to the Sat Chetanand, you are living your life until we reach to that state of the knowledge. This is how it is possible. I told you, discernment and the purity has to go together. You have a super smart friend who can analyze everything. There is a sharp discernment, but their emotions are a mess, making it hard for them to actually act on the inside because of lack of purity. We already experience in our daily life. You might know someone incredibly kind and calm, purity of the mind, but they lack the critical thinking to see through their lack of discernment. We have to have a both. If you don't have, even if you are lacking one, you will miss it. Did you get it? Now let us see that we will go in a very simple way once you understand these two factors, which results into the purity of the mind, and I touched upon a bit. It is also the grace. So we feel a sense of gratitude. Now come in a very simple way. If the purity and the discernment is intact, there is a delusion of perception. I'm seeing you. Is it a delusion of perception? Or is it a real perception? My sense organs are limited. Then I have a limited perception. So when I have a limited perception, what is the cause of that perception? I see the computer screen, but the computer screen cannot see me. Means I can see all the objects through these five sense organs, but none of the objects can see me. You see the delusion. And then the senses cannot see the mind. Mind can see the senses. That is the meaning. The mind is behind the sense organs. Sense organs are behind the objects. So it is an operating principle. This master says, object first, outermost level. Objects are perceived by the senses. You see that how I have reached from explaining the power of discernment and purity, we have directly reached to the topic. You have to, any object that you see is perceived by the sense organs, but the objects cannot see the sense organs. Mind can see the sense organs because it is behind, but the sense organs cannot see the mind. So there is some entity which can see the mind, but mind cannot see it. That is why we say mind needs to be transcended to reach to the highest state of meditation. So the ultimate seer. Where is the ultimate? Who is the ultimate seer? It is the pure consciousness. We discussed last time. It is Sat Chetanand, the existence, consciousness, and bliss. It is always. Now you have to be very clear about it. Language limitation. Objects, behind the object, senses. Behind the senses, mind. Behind the mind is the pure consciousness. It means behind the mind does not mean that behind the senses does not mean that this object has clouded the sense organs. I can see you, I can see the wall, I can see the light, I can see the room. So behind does not mean the object is in any way limiting my perception. But my sense organs are always limited. My mind is limited. My mind is limited, but one consciousness that is not limited is the pure consciousness. It is unbound consciousness. Master says this is what is the ultimate reality. We already understood that this consciousness is the inherent source of happiness and peace. It is beyond the boundaries. Now it transcends. That is the meaning. That is the meaning. Now, how to understand further? How to treat the path of self-discovery further? So the master says, why don't you break up into 3 layers of the reality? The physical reality, which is perceived by the 5 sense organs, subtle reality, which is perceived by the mind, and the causal reality, which is the cause of both the subtle and the physical. Without mind, there is no question. Without mind and the eyes, I cannot see you. So that subtle mind, the subtler body is stronger than the physical. Causal is still the stronger than the physical and the subtler. Do I become aware of that? When you are talking to the honey living in the world, so can you live into that subtle reality more and more? So Master says, once you start physical reality, by default we are aware. Subtle reality we forget. Because why? Because of the impurity of the mind. Because of the lack of discernment. Both ways. And the causal reality? No question. Why? Because I find I can blame others easily. It becomes an easy affair for me. Beyond the layers, beyond all the 3 layers, is the real self. From the 3 layers, we have understood from outside to inside. Now understand from inside to outside. Consciousness, real self. No condition, nothing of that sort. It is of the nature of peace and happiness. Now that consciousness starts manifesting at the causal level. So that consciousness plus satoguna is known as the innermost self. You can see the inner controller. Inner controller of what? For everything and anything. It represents the pure knowing aspect, knowledge associated with the knowledge, harmony, and light. Consciousness, now we are moving from inside to outside. We have understood scientifically. What scientifically? It starts from the physical, matter, and then it reaches to the consciousness. And they have a lot of dilemma and problems and confusion. So we start with the consciousness. So consciousness at the causal level, satoguna, consciousness plus rajoguna, we are the individual. Why we are the individual? The moment you wake up, hyperactivity, rajoguna, activity and inertia, these are activities associated with each individual. That is the reason I cannot sleep 24 hours. I cannot remain in an awake state for 24 hours. I cannot eat 24 hours. It's a Rajoguna and Tamoguna activities, interaction. And then the consciousness plus the Tamoguna is the material world. One consciousness, I am aware while looking at the screen, while looking at you, and while looking at the inner self. Consciousness is one. Different manifestations. Different manifestations are there. I'm coming to, you can say, the main topic of today. So now pick up, consciousness plus tamoguna is also the material world. Now if there is no space, question of having the air, fire, water, earth and other objects do not arise. So first there is a space. Property is sound. Space plus prana. I will talk about the prana later. Space plus prana becomes air. The property of air is sound and also the touch. Sound and the touch, both. We'll understand. You can raise the question. When the air plus prana gives rise to fire. Fire has three properties. It can have a sound, cracking. It can have a touch. It has a sight, the form. So it's a series. First is the space. Space plus prana becomes air. Air plus prana becomes fire. Fire plus prana becomes water. Water plus prana becomes earth. Earth contains all the five qualities of the senses, all the five sense organs. But the space contains only one. Air contains touch and sound. Fire contains touch, form and the sound. Water contains including the taste plus the three. And earth contains all the five. You have to apply that. You have to live into that. It is not intellectual. You have to live into that experience. Where there is a sight, it is the fire element. So whatever I see, it has a sense of touch also, and it has a sense of sound also. How? It has a sense of whatever I see. So see is the third element. That is how. That is how our masters explain. Because our mind is so much habituated with the modern scientific principles, it cannot easily digest it. Why Master is creating this model? So that we can move from the delusion to the discernment. Never forget, purity of the mind, discernment, both go together. If there is a purity of mind, I have a greater power of discernment. I have a keen power of discernment, it also purifies the mind. So sometimes people say, why don't you give me the breathing practices because that will help me settle my mind? Yes, it is possible, but it is temporary. We have to purify the mind by breathing so that the mind settles. It raises the power of discernment. It understands clearly, but by regular practice of power of discernment, without even breathing, you have the power of purity. So why we are doing it? To move from the delusion to discernment. Bridging, you can bridge the Eastern wisdom with the modern science. How? Dennis talked about quantum physics, quantum entanglement in consciousness. theory. He highlighted how quantum particles, even at a vast distances, remain interconnected, meaning measuring the state of one instantly influences the state of the other. Movement, the Prakriti, the three gunas. We can discuss that, but let me continue to pick up the same. So, hierarchical perspective of the reality. Three layers. Physical layer. I look at the mouse, it's okay. But is the mouse has an intelligent operation? Answer is yes. Anything and everything has an intelligent operation. Mountain, yes. River has a particular flow. So that intelligent operation is the subtle reality. And beyond that, it is a causal reality. And beyond that, there is a consciousness. That is the main thing that we should understand. So we should not take the solid as a solid. Solid is a myth. Then only the power of discernment will help us to purify the mind, and we can go deeper. This is the approach of this master. This is the approach of the master. Another approach, when you increase the sato guna in your life, it brings both the purity of the mind and also the power of the discernment. Two things we should start. Either you can say Shruti, listening and learning, then we have in logical reasoning, and then direct experience. In that process, the first thing comes the purity of the mind and the power of discernment. With that, we found that there are three levels of the reality: physical, subtle, and the causal. So we start with the physical. Physical reality has five components, the five elements. So when you become aware of that space, that space is causal, which is not visible. What we see is the physical space. So same thing, the causal five elements give rise to the perception at the physical level of the world. There is a mental space, there is a physical space, there is a causal space. So the way the three gunas are invisible, same way five elements are also invisible. So when we say earth element, it is not basically the earth. The earth is an element. Has an existence which gives you an appearance of solidity, rigidity, appearance of a solidity, appearance of a wall. So that five elements at the causal level moves at the subtle level, and then the subtler level of these five elements moves at the physical level, and then we recognize this is the object. But one thing, sense organ. Sense organ create the delusion of separation by making us believe. Now, one more principle, I'll take it. I'm repeating again. Delusion of separation by sense organ created by making us believe that we are contained within our physical bodies. The last principle this master discussed, I'm bringing in it. What I'm saying? Our sense organ create the delusion of separation that you are separate from me, I am separate from you, by making me believe we are contained within our physical bodies, hence we are separate from the rest of the world. How do you know that you are separate from it? Delusion of separation created by the sense organ. Do you see that? Just check it. You are aware. When I say you are aware, sense organ and mind says, yes, I'm aware something inside. What is inside? Are you inside the body? Who says? Sense perception. This belief arises from identifying with the physical sensation. I have a sensation of the sight coming from the sense organ, makes me believe that I am contained within, you are contained within yourself and you are separate. The fact is that we are not separate. Just check where you are. So as long as you feel you are within the body, it is because of the sense perception. This insight prompts us to question our immediate sensory perception. If true happiness comes from within, from our unbound consciousness, then seeking it outside has no relevance. This master approaches differently. He says, first understand, are you contained within the body? If yes, why you think that the happiness is outside? Pleasure is outside. Think. This demands, why I brought this power of discernment and the purity of the mind. If they both are not working, then now the future principles becomes challenging. And this principle another master says, seer and the seen principle. Seer and the seen principle. My senses, my eyes sees you. You are seen, eyes are seer. My mind perceives the eyes, so eyes become seen and the mind becomes seer. Now the mind becomes seen, the real self and the pure consciousness becomes the seer. So if you maintain that awareness throughout the day of the final seer, so there are three seers, seer and the seen with the sense organs. So the master says, if the seer becomes the seen, it is not the real seer. Knower in the know. Are you getting it? Eyes perceive you. So eyes are the seer. You are the seen. But for the mind, eyes are the seen. Eyes do not remain as a seer. It means eyes has both the properties. With reference to the object, it is seer. With reference to the mind, it is seen. So if the eyes changes the property from the seer to seen, it is not real. That causes the delusion. And then the mind is the seer and eyes are the seen. Now mind also acts as a seer in the seen. Mind acts as a seer for the rest of the activities you do in the world, But for the pure consciousness, it is the seen. That is the second seer. Third seer, you cannot change it. Consciousness, pure consciousness behind that mind, you cannot change it. But that is perceived in the Rajoguna. Consciousness plus Satoguna is known as the innermost self. And the innermost self is the highest consciousness. You reach to that highest level. I wonder you feel bored or did you pick up? Let us now discuss. The first two more principles are little bit challenging to understand. Once you understand them, the journey becomes very easy. Yes. Anyone, Dennis, you want to say?
My summary of today's session is that both purity of the mind and discernment are required on this path, and they are interdependent, meaning that the purity of the mind helps intellect to discern, because your mind is able to focus naturally and is not disturbed by uninvited thoughts and feelings. And discernment helps purifying the mind because it can separate false and the truth, then drop the false, and mind becomes more clear. And what happens when the mind becomes more clear? It is able to penetrate the layers of reality deeper, the layers that you mentioned, the physical, the subtle, causal layer. So I think when the mind is impure, its awareness is limited to the physical layer only. And at the physical layer, we are only aware of the input of sense organs, and we believe what the sense organs tell us. As the mind is purified, it can become aware of subtler layers, and these are behind the physical layers. So these are, in your classifications, the subtle and causal layers. And there we can start getting not only intellectual but also experiential understanding that we are not limited to the body and the mind, and that the wall is not actually solid but only appears solid, and there is no actual separation between the objects on a deeper layers. Everything and everyone is interconnected and interrelated.
Beautifully said. You take a just simple example. I see you. The mind behind my eyes say that, oh, you are separate and different from me. How? You are Dennis, I am Girish, my age is this, your age is this, my color is this, you see? I am entangled at the physical level, at the sense organ. Limited. I have a limited perception. You know, those who have a limited perception, I'm adding another statement, they become fanatics. Do you see that? They become very strong, they have a very strong religious views. It's a problem of limited perception. We need not to fight with them. Oh, well, this God alone is true. Yes, you are right. Go with them. But what is this statement? This is the purity of the mind. But why the purity of the mind? Then is picked up rightly. Why? Because now I have a subtler layer of perception. I can perceive more comprehensively. It is not limited perception. Same thing applies at your home. You have a very limited perception of the honey, and you have a subtle perception of the honey. That makes the life different. Do you see that? That is why these principles have to be properly understood Yes, David and Jerry.
Thank you. Fascinating lesson. My observation is that, again, as I've said it before, the hierarchy, we've got to realize the hierarchy that we get attached to our senses. We get attached to what our senses bring to the mind. We get attached to what the mind brings to us. But the reality is that they're, what did you just say? You just said that senses are limited perceivers. So we're getting false knowledge brought up to the mothership, brought up to the consciousness, which is false. So that space between consciousness and objects and senses needs to be really maintained. I hope I got it right.
Yes. You have to see them. You just, mental diagram all the objects of the world, senses, mind, and the real self. So it's a hierarchy. If you just for the sake of understanding here, the world purely material. But we remember consciousness plus tamoguna. Oh, this is what the matter is. But how can you say it has a consciousness? Mouse has an intelligent operation. Anything and everything in the world has an intelligent operation. Tell me. Mountain is a mountain because it is not a river. It has an intelligent operation. So it means the consciousness is there. Why all the religions says that the God is all pervading, but they are not able to prove it. We prove it. Whether you say it's a God or pure consciousness doesn't make any difference. How are you, Jerry?
I'm good, thank you. That's my mind went to exactly that. I loved where you took it from the inside out and the outside in. That worked well for me. Consciousness is then everywhere, which we already have talked about that so much that it's all pervading, never changing, everywhere, continuum. But can we really see it that way? Can we see the subtler aspects, and then the causal, the subtle, and the physical? And can we always keep that in our minds? And when we do, then the pureness and the discernment is really keen. It's unwavering.
Yes. If we keep it in the mind all the time, it is an awakening. I instantly perceive wall behind, and there is an indirect experience. It is consciousness plus tamoguna. You pick up one principle, what is changing and what is unchanging. We reach to the pure consciousness that is unchanging reality. And the rest are changing. Why? How? Caused by the three gunas, understood at the three levels: physical, subtle, and causal. One thought prompted into my mind. So when, say for example, you look at your honey, anyhow which is related, your dad or your mom, your husband or your wife, you look at the physical person and your mind says honey. How? It is the subtle perception. It is the subtle perception. Huh? When he goes to the college and the teacher, she is a teacher. Label. Label does not come from the sense organs, it comes from the mind, the subtler layer. And without consciousness, these labels cannot function. Consciousness, because I know. It is always there, all the three layers are present here. That needs to be not only understood, when you, by power of discernment, mind is pure, you start living into that state. This is what the master is saying. Yes, Brandy, you want to say something?
Thank you. I was thinking during the lesson when you reminded us of Dennis's example of quantum physics a while back, the example of when like a mother is separated from her child and something happens to the child and the mom's not anywhere physically near the child but can feel it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I don't really have the words to say how that ties to this, but I think it points to the limitations of what we think our perception is through the senses.
Yes.
And with that purity and discernment, when we don't even, and I don't even think most people know that that's what it is when they have that strong bond, for example, between like a mother and a child, then they know like something, you hear about that, right? These examples of that happening.
Yes. Rare examples of mother and the child, but in that process, as we grow older, we lose touch with that bond between the mother and ourselves. Why we lose it? Because of the impurity of the mind, because of the gross nature of perception of our senses. So that hides the subtle perception, that overlooks. And once it hides the subtle layer of the perception, what to talk about the causal level? What to talk about the higher consciousness level? So the master lays instantly, here is the purity of the mind, here is the discernment, how they both are interconnected, interrelated. You are consistently listening and learning. It raises the power of discernment. That power of discernment helps you. Oh, why I was fighting with the honey? Is there no need? So you know some principle clicks, and the power of discernment says there is no need. Mind is pure. Or you can approach directly through the purity of the mind to gain the power of discernment. Yes, Samir, how are you?
Sir, I want to talk about the power of discernment in my life. In my life, as I started this journey, I think there were a lot of layers of ignorance in my mind. Lot of layers of ignorance, and I was doing meditation, but I was going into peace and coming back. I was going into peace and coming back to ignorance. As I started using the power of discernment, the layers of those ignorance started removing, and the mind started becoming pure, or it is start becoming purified, whatever you can say.
Yeah.
And slowly the discipline in my life, which I was thriving since my childhood, that there is no discipline in my life, that discipline started coming naturally to me, just because my mind became pure because of the power of discernment. So that is my personal experience of what I did in last so many years.
Beautifully said. I did not touch that point. So when you have a power of discernment applied in your daily life and relationship, it naturally brings the discipline in your life, and that discipline is one sense of purity of the mind. Just think of that. I don't want to do this, I want to do this what is right. So it is the purity of the mind. Yes, you brought a very subtle point. It brings a sense of discipline in my life. And that discipline also dissolves your ego. Sometimes you are talking to your honey near and dear ones, and your mind is overwhelmed to talk habitually, to react habitually, because that power of discernment gives a break. Hold on, just check. Live into that state of awareness, and then go for it. Beautiful point. How are you, Vaibhav?
Thank you, sir. So one thing I was thinking that when the mind is not discerning and we are moving from outside to inside, so I recognize myself in the experiences that I'm having. I define myself with those experiences, and so I see that other person is also different and I am also different. And when I'm moving from inside and the discernment is there, then I do not recognize myself with those experiences, but it's just an experiences. It will not be my experiences, and then every experience is same.
Yes, yes, I understand what you are saying. Ah, you have an experience with the pet. The pet is sitting there looking at you. It is known as the baseline awareness. I'm just giving a person number one in us. Person number one in us, or we become the person number one, like our pet. Pet is just looking at you. You are looking at the dog. The moment you show the bite of food, what happens to the dog? But now you have become the person number two. Person number two. Person number two think. Person number two is the default mind. It is an impulsive mind. So, like the animal. Person number two. The problem with us is this person number two has also a language, imagination, fancies. The dog does not say that the bite of the food is very tasty, I will have it. It only knows the baseline awareness, person number one in us. So when you wake up and you have no thought, you are still aware. Are you paying attention? I'm giving another. This principle will come later. And this second person is the default mind. It is the impulsive mind and the habitual mind. Say, for example, you are listening to me plus reacting. That is person number two in you at this moment. So, what our masters are saying, you introduce the person number three, it is the discerning intellect. You check person number one, baseline awareness, you saw, you feel, you touch, okay, everything is okay. Now check the person number two. Why? Why you are impulsive? Why you are habitual? When you question, person number three comes. That is the discerning intellect. And that discerning intellect gives the direction that purifies the mind. What is that purification? Person number three, that is the discerning intellect, like the dog, like the dog, plus, like the dog bite of the food and the dog jumps. But we have a language, no, jumping is not good, but anyhow I will grab this food. I like this food. You see the person number two, it is impulsive. It is planning, it is fantasizing. That is the problem of the mind. So that is the default mind. And when you introduce the person number three, that is the discerning intellect, you already purified the mind. That is the meaning of what we say choiceless awareness by one great master, J. Krishnamurti. You do nothing, you are just like tamoguna, static, inertia. You look at the dog, no response. Look at the plants and the people, just living in tamoguna. Baseline awareness. Person number two is always impulsive, reactive, excited, full of impurities. Person number three in us is the discerning intellect. If you don't introduce, why all this gossip by these masters? To help us to recognize that we are the person number three, not neither one nor two. Are you getting it? These three persons are living constantly in us. And if we introduce person number 2, we keep it on the top, you have no problem. You don't have a limited perception. You change yourself. That is the power of the knowledge, what the Master is talking about on our Saturday session. Okay, that is all. We'll meet again. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Namaste.